Okay, let's start it. Let's bow to the Buddha, everybody. First bow, second bow, third bow, bow to the Bande. Thank you.
All right. We're gonna start now. Good morning, everyone. For those who
Good
are in the,
morning. Good morning.
we are
Yeah.
continuing on the third talk, third day, third lesson, and we are finally going to get into the second sutra, Ugra Paripucha Sutra. And I'm thinking that we are going to be early to finish today, but let's see. So yesterday I've laid out the whole structure of the Diamond Sutra, which consists of path of wisdom and path of skillful means. And it also divided up into five body or five parts. There are resolution, mind control, mental enlightenment, mental expansion, and supreme. And we were at this mental expansion yesterday. So there are two missions for the Bodhisattva at this stage. The first one is to save all beings, and the second one is to adorn the Buddha lands. And even though this path is just for the stage or the higher level Bodhisattva, but we can still practice what they do in our daily life by making it more humane way. So yesterday I also talked about be like Guan Yin or Avalokitesvara Bodhisattva because there is a stanza in the Lotus Sutra that says if someone must be saved by whatever body or role, the Bodhisattva will manifest in that body or role in order to save those people. So imagine if you are a parent for your children, you'll try to be whatever role to fulfill their wishes. And we apply this kind of understanding and thinking and spirit to all other beings other than our children. And I think that's the key practice in Mahayana Buddhism regarding to the great compassion. We try to bigger, making our compassion bigger by expanding our love and compassion to not only our children or our acquaintance, the people that we love, but also to the people that we don't really know, and even to the stranger and even to our enemies. And today we are going to move on into the last stage of this skillful means path, which is the supreme body, which is the attainment of the Buddhahood itself. And across all the content of the Diamond Sutra, I just want to pick up two verses that occur in the Diamond Sutra. So there are only two verses throughout the sutra, and this is the first verse that says, "Someone who tries to discern me in form or seek me in sound is practicing non-Buddhist methods and will not discern the Tathagata." So this verse is translated from the Kumarajiva's Chinese translation. You might not encounter the same phrasing of the verse if you look directly into the Sanskrit version or the English translation from the Sanskrit version, because there are some discrepancies in the length of the verse between the Sanskrit and the Chinese translation, especially the Kumarajiva's version. The verse is shorter compared to other Chinese translations such as Xuanzang and the others. So on this verse, if we contemplate on this verse, we get to know that even though someone has attained the Buddhahood, it's actually not something that that is attained or obtained in the state of Buddhahood, because for this couple 2 or 3 days, we've talked a lot about that something is not something, therefore it is called something. It means that we don't want to get trapped into any kind of form or any kind of conception. We want to try to not to speak something, because whatever that is spoken by speech, whatever that can be thought by our mind or imagination, those things are still in the worldly conception, which is limited, right? Because we know that our senses can be deceiving, but also our senses can be limited in many ways. We cannot really think of or speak of something that we cannot imagine. So something that is beyond our imagination, because we can't really think about it, we will think that, oh, it cannot be that, just because of our limited thought. But actually, it's not the case. That's why throughout the sutra, we are encouraged to stop thinking about anything, stop trying to define what is the Buddha or what is nirvana, what is enlightenment, what do we get when we get there. And the Buddha answers to this question by saying, you'll know when you get there, right? Well, it's just like there's a Chinese saying, if you want to know the taste of the tea, you have to taste it yourself, right? And it also applies to any other foods. If you want to understand what is the taste of a hamburger, you have to try it yourself. What is the taste of a kimchi? You have to try it yourself. I can't just tell you what it tastes like by associating with something that you've already known, because it will, reduce the exact taste by trying to associating with things that you know. Like if I say kimchi is like pepper, it's not really, it got a special taste. And it also apply to the state of Buddhahood. So the Buddha says someone who tries to discern me in form or sound or any kind of conception is practicing non-Buddhist methods and will not discern the Tathagata. Because why? Because Tathagata cannot be discerned by our thoughts. Our normal people thinking or thoughts are too basic, too limited to think something beyond our world. So using the same thinking and apply it into our praying, right? To whom are we really praying, right? So when praying to the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas or any other deities, let's say, who are they exactly? Who are the object of our praying? And who is this Buddha? Who is Bodhisattva? What qualities do they possess if they were to help you? And let me, okay. So we have to really understand our object of worship, our object of prayer, because without really understanding to whom we are praying, we're just doing something that is nonsense. So who is the Buddha? Can the Buddha help us? Can the Bodhisattva help us? Can we really try to find the Buddha in a form or in a sound? No, we cannot. So think deeper. Is prayer an external seeking for help or a form of self-encouragement or self-reliance? So the Buddhist way of praying is actually a kind of encouragement, self-encouragement or self-reliance. I pray to the Buddha in order to encourage myself. I can do this. Even though we are saying that, oh, with the help of the Buddha and Bodhisattva, may my career be succeed. May everything I do will have a better result. We are actually do this as a kind of self-encouragement so that when we do something, we believe in ourselves and we have this kind of self-confidence. And then the first number two is the reason for right contemplation. How should one teach it to others without grasping to sign, staying with things as they are immovable? Why? This is just in the middle of the sentence. And then here's the verse. All conditioned phenomena are like a dream, an illusion, a bubble, a shadow. Like the dew or like lightning, you should discern them like this. So all these similes are toward are pointing at the same thing, which is the conditioned phenomena are not real, even though they exist, but they are not real. So what is the conditioned phenomena? The conditioned phenomena is all kinds of phenomena except nirvana. So how do you define nirvana? You can define it by the way of absence. What is absence in nirvana? That is nirvana. Or what is not nirvana is something that what we call conditioned phenomena. And what is not a conditioned phenomena is nirvana. So everything that we see, we touch, we smell, even our mind, our thinking are all conditioned phenomena, meaning that they arise because of interdependence connection with each other. They cannot arise by their own. Only one thing cannot arise. They need two or more things joined together in order to arise, right? For example, our thought, we need the mind, the brain, and the mind object in order for our mind consciousness to arise. And the sight as well. We need our eye sense, right? And then we need the light. We need our object of seeing in order for our sight or eye consciousness to arise. So these things, even right now, you're looking at the sentence, you're looking at the screen, you're looking at your computer, even though they exist in your mind, it's real, but in the ultimate reality, they aren't real. They are just like dream. Your dream, is your dream real? There are two answers to that, right? In your subjective experience, they are real. You're really getting into this kind of situation in your dream, and you're really experiencing all kinds of experiences that you get through in your dream. But upon waking up, those aren't real at all in your waking up state. So it's also like an illusion, like a bubble, like a shadow, like the dew or lightning. They all are exist but not real. So um one lesson from this verse is that we need to look at everything from the perspective of the enlightened one. So the world is an illusion and the result is not real. So we have these five bodies and two paths in the Diamond Sutra, right? From the resolution body until this stage, which is the Buddhahood, which is the supreme body. So now we are at the result of our practice. When we think that we are already attained this kind of stage, the result, the end result, I'm finally here, I'm finally graduated from my practice, and then now I'm a Buddha. But in actuality, even the stage of the Buddha is not really real, as we've discussed a lot for a few couple days, right? Because they have no self nature. Even the Buddha nature doesn't have the core. We attain the Buddhahood because we practice, because a lot of interdependent connections that make us a Buddha. So don't think about the result as real, because during the process, we know that we shouldn't abide in the four notions of self, namely self, right? Person, sentient being, and even lifespan. We cannot grasp into anything. But then why, upon attaining the Buddhahood, we cling on this kind of state? That can't be the case, right? And then when things are too complicated, maintain calmness. And we need to change perspective by moving our current state into the future. So imagine that you are in the future now, and then looking back at your current experiences, and then these experiences have become your past. Would you still see them the same way, or does it become like a dream or memory? So think of it this way. If you really struggle with your problems right now, think of it ahead. 10 years from now, 20 years from now, would it still be a problem? Or you'll think that I was too young and too naive at that moment. That's why I screw up everything, right? So by doing this kind of changing perspective, actually, we can be more calm rather than getting stuck into this situation at the present moment. So sometimes this kind of changing perspective would be useful for some situation if we cannot really stay in the present moment with our suffering. We need to change, look back into today, and then let's see. Okay, now we are finally getting into the inquiry of Ugra. Well, the name of the sutra is a little bit longer and hard to pronounce. It's pronounced Ugra as a person name. Pariprucha is the question or inquiry. So the title of the sutta means the inquiry of Ugra. And for the sake of convenience, I'll just use Ugra, the short form of Ugra Pariprucha, to refer to this sutra. All right. So I base my talk on two references. The first one is Venerable Yin-Shun's book, the research on early Mahayana. If you read Chinese, you can refer to this book, which is this thick. It can be your pillow because it's too thick. And then the second one is the A Few Good Men of the Bodhisattva Path according to Inquiry of Ukra by a renowned scholar, Jen Napier. So there are three Chinese versions for this text. The first one is by Yin-Shun. The title is Dharma Mirror Sutra. The second one is Dharma Raksa's version. The title is The Sutra on the Inquiry of Ugra, the Gruhapati concerning Bodhisattva conduct. And the third one by Kang Seng Hui. The title is The Section on Ugra, the Gruhapati, under the Ratnakuta section in the Chinese Tripitaka. So the one that we are basing on is the second one, the Dharma Raksa version. The sutra on the inquiry of Ugra the Gruhapati. We got the epithet here, which I'll explain in a moment, concerning Bodhisattva conduct. Even though we have the Gandhari version, the earlier Gandhari version, but I haven't really seen the text myself. And the main themes of this text is it's a normative text, meaning prescriptive text, many do's and don'ts, don't do that, don't do that, one should do this, one should do that, one shouldn't do this, and one shouldn't do that. And then there is an emphasis on the importance of giving. And then there is the practice of lay bodhisattva and renunciant bodhisattva. And lastly, there is monastery. If one has become a renunciant, there are two types of renunciant or two types of monks, namely the monastery monks, the city monks, and the wilderness monks or the forest monks, right? Even though the sutra puts a strong emphasis for a lay people, a lay practitioner to become a monk, but the core of the text, the spirit of this sutra is still a bodhisattva path for lay practitioner. So that's why we can see a lot of prescriptions, practices that are directed toward lay practitioner. And then among the monastery or wilderness renunciants, the text want us to become a forest monks, meaning we got to go into the wilderness, into something that is really quiet, just for ourselves, and practice there. So Ugra is considered early Mahayana as the core of our talk this year, early Bodhisattva practices. We will see how the development of the Bodhisattva's practices from the early period until the later period. And we got to see the comparison, the differences and similarities between early and later Mahayana. Of course, the later Mahayana practices are more complicated because of the ideas, the conceptions, the doctrines, the philosophy are more advanced at a later period. But then here in this sutra, we get to see a lot of doctrine, conception, and even practices that are still primitive because the formation of Mahayana, right, the path to pursue the Buddhahood is, we can say, still developing, and they are go hand in hand with someone, with those who are practicing the path of Arahant. So they can still go together. There is no conflict between Hinayana, right, the small vehicle, and Mahayana, the great vehicle. Even though in the sutra there is mention about Mahayana, right? But then actually there is no Hinayana term in the sutra, meaning that it's still early period, because at the later period when this kind of sect, right, this group of Mahayana people, this group of people who are pursuing the Buddhahood is kind of, they're differentiating their path with those who are just pursuing the arahantship. And those who pursue arahantship are seen as more inferior compared to those who are pursuing the Buddhahood. This happened at a later period when, the conflict were really intense already. But then at the earlier period, there's no conflict. People are still harmony with each other. And then there are options for Sravaka and Bodhisattva vehicle. By Sravaka, I mean the path prescribed by the mainstream Buddhism that one should achieve arahantship. But then by Bodhisattva path, it means that one wants to pursue the Buddhahood, right? They have to undergo aeons and aeons completing, perfecting their perfections in order to become a completely perfect enlightenment. And there is no doctrine of three bodies of the Buddha. So if you are familiar with this doctrine, especially from the Lotus Sutra or from the Huayan Sutra, right? Even from the Zen, Japanese Buddhism, Korean Buddhism, they have this kind of, if you've ever heard about it, that our Sakyamuni Buddha is just an incarnation of a real Buddha that is residing on another universe right now. That's the real Buddha resides. But our Sakyamuni Buddha is just one of many of his incarnation that live in our earth and teach us the Dharma. So there is no such kind of doctrine yet at this sutra. And then there is no rhetoric of emptiness. So in terms of timeline, the Ugra text is earlier than Vajracharika, or you could say that they are at the same time period, but they have really different theme, really different emphasis, and really different practices. But surely in this text, there is no mention about emptiness as we've just seen anywhere, everywhere in the Diamond Sutra, right? Because Ugra is really focusing on the practice. And then no devotion to celestial Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. So in our current Mahayana practices, we know a lot of Buddhas from the past, present, and future, and from the 10 directions at the present moment. So many Buddhas can live at the same time, even though they live in a different universe. There's no mention about those conceptions in this sutra. Even there is no mentioning about other bodhisattvas like Avalokitesvara Bodhisattva, Manjushri Bodhisattva from the other realm. There's no mention about Amitabha Buddha in this sutra. There's only our Sakyamuni Buddha. So we can see a very, very primitive um, doctrine in this text. And even though we can see that the later conception is developing at this stage, but they're not mature yet. So according to this text, Dharma Raksas version, we have 8 chapters in total. And in our text, there are chapters, but the other versions, the other 2 Chinese translations, there are no chapters. It's just one straight long um, text. So our text divides this sutra into 8 chapters. There and basically they are divided into 2 main categories. The first one is lay bodhisattva, and then the second part is renunciant bodhisattva. So today we are going to focus on the lay bodhisattva. We might want to cover 6 or 7 chapters. So the first chapter is superior man. Why? Because the name is in Chinese literally is translated as superior man, meaning not an inferior man. And then the second chapter is about precepts. The third is physician, filthy home, when we have to contemplate that living at home is not the best option to practice Buddhism. And then there's a very, very long paragraphs spent on saying or putting emphasis on the importance of giving, especially giving to the beggars, right? Not giving to the Buddha, not giving to monks, but giving to any beggars that you meet on the street. And then there is an emphasis on worshiping the stupa or visiting a monastery. But then for the renunciant bodhisattva, monks are forced to practice austerity. So unlike today's Mahayana Buddhism, we have a very different shape from the Mahayana monk from the early period, because this sutra, Ugra Sutra, kind of pursue or prescribe a kind of forest monk bodhisattva theory, meaning the origin of Mahayana path came from the forest tradition of monks. So there's a tension between monks who live in the city and monks who live in the forest. And this group of monks who live in the forest will think that, well, these kinds of monks who live in the city are corrupted already, and it's time for the monks who are still pure to get back into the basic, to get back into the forest and practice the real practice in the forest, right? Avoid any kind of disturbance, any kinds of contacts with people, and you can really focus on the practice in the forest. And then here we arrive at the wilderness dwelling chapter, which is the last chapter. So the main character in this sutra is the Buddha and Ugra, the Grihapati. So Ugra is a lay person, not just regular lay person, but the Grihapati. So we are going to talk, what is this epithet really, Grihapati? So Grihapati consists of two words, Gruha and Pati. Gruha means house, Pati is Lord. So house Lord, the one who possesses a house, right? But it's not just as simple as lay people, so to speak, because the Gruhapati has different meanings. The first one is it applies exclusively to those of considerable financial means. So those who are rich are Gruhapati, simply speaking. Second meaning is it's a kind of caste names from the Brahmana or Kshatriya caste. If you know about the caste systems in Indian history, right? There are four castes. Brahmana is the highest, and then the second is Kshatriya, and then we have the Vaishya, which is the merchant, and then the lowest level is the Sudra, which is the slave. And it can also mean a merchant. So financial means Kshatriya, Brahmana, merchant. They all point at the same direction, financial or money, those who possess money. And then the fourth definition, it could also mean one of the seven jewels of the Chakravatin to mean treasurer or financial advisor. So if you are familiar with this term, Chakravatin, which is the wheel-turning lord. One of the example of this person is King Ashoka. King Ashoka is considered a wheel-turning lord or wheel-turning king because he conquers a lot of lands in India by Dharma mainly. And the fifth definition is just a regular adult males. So what is Gruhapati really? It is the social status acquired at birth plus a certain degree of personal occupational reputation, or in other words, a man of substance, a leading citizen. So are you qualified as Gruhapati? This is my question for you all. Um, how do you know if you're a Gruhapati? Look at your social status at birth and look at your personal occupational reputation. Have you achieved a certain level in your work? And are you a man of substance, a leading citizen kind of? So by this definition, when we are saying Ugra, the Gruhapati, we know that Ugra is a very wealthy man, right? And very famous in his society, right? Another example, another person that is like Ugra is Anathapindika in the Buddhist literature. So it's kind of the supporter, the main supporter of the Buddha during the Buddha's time, as well as our main character here, Ugra. And then, yeah, you have to be born from a middle class family and you have to be wealthy and or powerful in order to be qualified as Gruhapati. So in the Buddhist terms, we have this kind of way of speaking. We have Gruhin, meaning householder, like y'all, everyone who is not a monk, who is not a renunciant, is considered a householder, whether you are a Buddhist or not. You're still householder by default. So we are all born householder by default. And then if you decide to go forth to become a monk or a renunciant from any tradition, from any religions, you are called Pravrajita or Pabajita in Pali, meaning a renunciant, not necessarily the Buddhist monk. But then specifically in the Buddhist term, we got this lay Buddhist or Upasaka, specifically refer to the lay Buddhist, and bhikshu or bhikshuni, the Buddhist monk or Buddhist nun. So what qualify you as a upasaka or a lay Buddhist? The qualification is if you've undertaken refuges, if you have going to the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha for refuge. There is a ceremony for death, kind of you make your aspiration, you repeat the statement after in front of the monks who who is the witness that you've become an upasaka or a lay Buddhist. So who are your temples, Gruhapati? Remember, the Gruhapati is the man of substance, who is the kind of the leader in his society. Every temple must have at least one Gruhapati. Okay, there can be none. There must be one. In Chinese, we call it Hu Fa, right? The one who donate the most money, mainly for the building of the temple from the scratch, right? Because if someone wants to build a temple from the ground, we can't really rely on just a small donation from lay Buddhists or from any householder randomly. We really rely on at least one Gruhapati, the one who supports the temple the most. So that is the Gruhapati in a temple. So who are your temples, Gruhapati or Gruhapatis? Maybe more than one. You should be able to name it if you are senior member of the temple, or maybe you yourself. And who are the Gruhin, Upasaka, and Bhikshu at your temple? Can you name it? The Gruhin meaning just regular householder, the Upasaka meaning the more serious practitioner who have gone for refuge to the triple gems, and the bhiksu, the monks, the monastics at the temple. Right? All right. So about the Ugra, who is this person? Who is this guy? This guy doesn't appear only in our sutra, it appears elsewhere in Agama texts, in mainstream Buddhism texts. So like this one, it appears in Mahajjhima Agama, and it has the parallel in Anguttara Nikaya. Here is just some key points about his life. So one day, this Ugra um, was hanging out with his mistress, right? Having fun, and then he drank a lot and become drunk. But then upon seeing the Buddha's radiance, this is the first time he met the Buddha. So the Buddha is approaching from a distance. He immediately wakes up from the drunkenness. And the Buddha taught him Dharma, and he eventually attained Anagami, the third stage, the non-returner stage, and become a devout Buddhist. And um, he gave away his wife. So the story actually goes like this. Since he has become an Anagami non-returner and he became a devout Buddhist, he went home and he calls all his wives and he says to his wives that I'm now a devout Buddhist, right? And I observe 5 precepts already because, in Buddhist literature, if you're a layperson, the maximum level that you can attain is only anagami. And at this level, usually there are only two situations. You are either becoming a monk in order to attain arahantship, because arahantship can only be attained by renunciate, by monks or nuns, and not a lay people. So you're either become a monk or nun, or you enter nirvana immediately if you happen to attain arahantship. So there is some limitations for lay people to achieve the full liberation, namely arahantship. You can only attain anagami. That's why in this text, why didn't Ugra attain the full, the fourth stage, the last stage, the complete stage? Because he's still a lay person. So upon arriving at his home, he calls his wives and says this to his wives, that I'm now a devout Buddhist. I observe 5 precepts now. So if you all want to stay at this home, you can just stay and do merits. If you don't want to stay, you can go back to your own homes. But if you want to marry another guy, you can. I'll marry you with the other guys. So the first wife came up and say, well, since you are a devout Buddhist now, you can't no longer have any relationship with me. I want you to marry me with another guy. And Ugra, of course, is eagerly giving up his first wife and marry his first wife to the other guy. And the other guy was shocked because he thinks Ugra is going to kill him. What happened? Why do you suddenly marry your first wife with me? And Ugra says, no, I do it eagerly because I'm now a devout Buddhist. And that's the basically Ugra story. But then in the same sutra, the sutra is mainly saying or mentioning the 8 amazing qualities of Ugra. So there are 8 amazing qualities of Ugra. The first one is because he immediately woke up from drunkenness upon seeing the Buddha from the distance, it's considered one of the 8 amazing qualities possessed by Ugra. The second one is he attained non-returner after hearing the Dharma and become a devout Buddhist. The third one is he never violates the observed 5 precepts. The fourth is he gives away his wives, never looks down on senior, middle, or junior monks. So in the rank of monastics, we have this kind of level. Senior monk, if you are 20 years already in your profession, in your renunciant career, middle kind of the first 10 years, and then junior below 5 years, kind of the rank shift about how many years to be qualified as junior, middle, or senior is different between tradition. And when giving food, he never differentiates monks based on the level of sagehood, whether you are just a regular monk or the stream enterer, the second level, the third, or an arahant. And then the seventh is, although deities always told him about the Buddha's greatness, he was not excited because of that. Rather, he knew from his own experience, meaning that he doesn't just believe or just hear from someone to say about the greatness of the Buddha. He knew it from his own experience that the Buddha is great, right? That's what I'm always trying to do. I don't want to be a salesman that being the one who tells you that, oh, this sutra is pretty good, this practice is good, the Buddhism is good, that you have to practice the Mahayana path because it's good, it's a pretty valuable for your life. No, I want you to experience it yourself, prove it yourself. If it's really benefits you, do it. And he has abandoned the lower five feathers. So these are the eight amazing qualities of Ugra. So what are the lower five feathers? So we got into this conception about the 10 feathers in the mainstream Buddhism. If someone wants to achieve arahantship, one has to eliminate these five feathers or defilements. And then we also have these six perfections or sometimes 10 perfections, depending on which sutra you're referring to in the Bodhisattva path. So in order to fulfill a Bodhisattva path and become a Buddha, one needs to complete or perfect the 10 or six perfections. So on this side, on the left side, the 10 feathers, the arahantship path, is the path that I call the subtraction path, meaning your your job in order to attain an arahantship is to get rid as much as possible the feathers. So you need to subtract. So the first stage, the stream enterer has eradicated the first three feathers, namely self-view, clinging to rites and rituals, dubbed in triple gems, dubbed in Buddha, in the teaching of the Buddha, and in the Sangha monastic community, right? Self-view, right? We've already talked about a lot about this in the Diamond Sutra. Clinging to rites and rituals, believing that doing a certain kinds of rituals will purify our karma, will purify our mind, and will help us to attain liberation, which is wrong. We need to practice the Noble Eightfold Path in order for us to attain liberation. That's the only way, not by relying on rituals or rites like that. And then if you weaken the other two feathers, namely sensual desire and ill will, you attain the second stage, which is the one returner. If you eradicated them, then you attain the third stage or the non-returner, which Ugra attains, right? And then if you eradicate the this five is called the lower five feathers, and the other five is called the highest or the higher five feathers. And these other five, material rebirth desire, immaterial rebirth desire, conceit, restlessness, and ignorance, can only be eliminated by an arahant. So an arahant is someone who has eliminated all the 10 feathers. So if you get rid these three, you attain Srimantara, you get rid five, you attain third stage. If you get rid all of them, you attain an arahant. This is the way, right? You try to eradicate all the defilements in our mind. But then on the other hand, a bodhisattva path, their task, their duty is what I call addition. You need to add something, you need to perfect something, you need to fulfill something. So you add up, right? If you perfect or if you fulfill the perfection of giving, you attain the first stage out of 10 stages of bodhisattva. If you continue on to perfect your morality, you attain the second out of 10 stages of Bodhisattva path. Again, patience. If you fulfill the patience perfection, you attain the third stage, energy, fourth stage, concentration, fifth stage, wisdom, sixth stage, and so on. And there are 10. And that's why in the Diamond Sutra, after the path of wisdom, right? We call it path of skillful means because at this stage, the bodhisattva has attained up until the sixth, and then He's going forth from the seventh stage until the 10th stage to attain the Buddhahood. So the one is by subtraction, the other one is by fulfilling or addition. All right, and we are going into the first chapter about the superior man. So on the first chapter, we have the resolution, exactly the same, just like the Diamond Sutra. The first thing to do in the Bodhisattva path, in the Bodhisattva practice, is to have a resolution, to aspire. And even though the content of the aspiration might be different from text to text, but we know that they are basically consist of the same spirit, which is to attain Buddhahood and to save all beings. So these five sentences are the examples of the aspiration to save all beings. But how do they save them, or who to save? And this is the answer. The unrescued, I will rescue. The unliberated, I will liberate. The uncomforted, I will comfort. Those who have not yet reached parinirvana or nirvana, just the same thing, I'll cause to attain parinirvana. I'll eliminate all people's heavy burden. And by heavy burden here means five skandhas, which is the life, the body and mind. As long as we possess the five skandhas, we are considered carrying the heavy burden of this samsara life, going from life to life. So this is the definition of bodhisattva. What is a bodhisattva? The one who aspires to rescue the unrescued, liberate the unliberated, and so on. And the text begins by Ugra asking a question to the Buddha. That's why the sutra is titled The Inquiry or the Question of Ugra, right? So there are two questions which made up our whole framework for this sutra. The first question is, how should the householder bodhisattva, while dwelling at the household stage, act in accordance with the Tathagata's word, not damage or fall away from the qualities conducive to enlightenment, be free of blameworthy deeds in this lifetime, and be distinguished in future life. So Ugra is speaking for you all, the householder bodhisattva online here today. How does or how should a householder bodhisattva practice the bodhisattva path, simply speaking? And the second question here is Ugra is asking the question for me, for us who are monks and nuns. How do the renunciant bodhisattvas practice the Dharma and practice virtue through both teaching and instruction? So, two main questions. How should the householder bodhisattva and renunciant bodhisattva live, and how should they practice? Really, pretty similar question to the one that we see in the Diamond Sutra. And the Buddha's answer is the first step, right, for a lay bodhisattva, for the lay people, in order to practice the bodhisattva path is to go for refuge. And how does one do that? First, one need to go to the Buddha for refuge by saying, I must attain the body of a Buddha, ornamented with the 32 marks of a great man. See? So by this refuge doesn't mean anything that you have to rely on the Buddha. You have to rely on the external Buddha or Dharma or Sangha, but rather it's really kind of self-reliance. So to go to refuge is the same way to say to go to ourself for refuge, self-reliance. So Buddha here, right? I must attain the Buddha. I must attain the body of a Buddha, meaning I must attain the Buddhahood myself. That's what is meant by going to the Buddha for refuge. And then Dharma is desiring, rejoicing, protecting, abiding, dwelling, practicing, seeking, and sharing the Dharma. This is how we go to the Dharma for refuge. And then Sangha, we pay respect and reference toward the monks who are stream enterers, once returners, non-returners, arhats, four stages of sagehood, or ordinary persons who are members of Sravaka vehicle, Pratyekya Buddha vehicle, or Grid vehicle. So we are paying respect to everyone, simply speaking, as long as they are in the path of the Buddhahood, no matter if you're arahantship path or the Bodhisattva path, we have to pay respect to these people. So this is the first step for lay people to practice the Bodhisattva path. Pretty basic, right? And then um, about the content of the superior man, of course, superior man needs to do the superior deeds. What are those deeds? The first one is seek wealth according to the Dharma, right? There are many prescriptions in the sutra, but I can only draw some from the text that is relevant. If you want to know the full prescriptions, what to do and what not to do, you can look to the sutra yourself. The first one is to seek wealth according to the Dharma by not doing any killing, anything that harm other beings, right? Just any normal job. Um, and then pay respect to parents, give wealth to children, wives, servants, hired hand, and wage earners, honor friends, companions, and relatives, and also unmoved by the eight worldly things. What is the eight worldly things? Or even sometimes it's called the eight worldly winds. Like you don't get easily be blown away by these worldly winds. Those are profit or loss, fame or infamy, praise or blame, happiness or suffering. So think about it. We as humans get moved easily by one of these eight worldly things. We always want profit, right? We don't want any lose. We always want to be fame. We don't want any bad names. We want to be praised. We don't want to be blamed. We want happiness. We don't want suffering. Well, as long as we have this kind of intention, we only want the other side of this kind of four things here. And we only want the profit, fame, praise, happiness. We don't want the loss, infamy, blame, and suffering. Our life will suffer more actually. So we need to do, we need to accept whatever condition we are in at the moment, whether it's a profit or loss, right? Because it's just normal in the world for us to sometimes we are happy, but sometimes we are sad. And then one is never satisfied with how much she has learned. So these are just a couple examples from the sutra about superior deeds, right? And we are moving on to the second chapter, precepts. What kind of precepts prescribed in this sutra? There are 11 precepts. What are the 11 precepts? Well, actually, these precepts, you've heard about it most of the time. It's actually 5 precepts or 10 good deeds, if you know about it, plus no intoxicant. So the first one is abstain from taking life, abstain from taking what is not given, abstain from wrong conduct with regard to desire, or usually it is translated as no sexual misconduct. The fourth one is no lying, but we need to extend it a little bit longer by using the usual contents, the usual kinds, which is abstain from false speech, should not slander others, abstain from speaking harsh words, and also should not indulge in idle chatter. These are the usual types of extended kinds of no lying. And then the eighth is abstain from intoxicating drinks or alcohols, should not have covetous thoughts or desire, and then should not have thoughts of malice or anger, should see things as they truly are, or should not have these delusional thoughts. So the first three is to do good deeds from the body. The first three is the bodily action. And then the second four, the other four contents, is the speech. And then the last three is the mind, right? So we only have these 11. Actually, it comes from the 10 good deeds plus no drinking, right? And regarding the about no intoxicating drinks, this sutra actually says something really amazes us all, because even though a bodhisattva, a lay bodhisattva, cannot drink, cannot have any intoxicants, but they are encouraged to give alcohols to those who are in need. It's really controversial. We don't get to see this kind of saying anywhere in other Mahayana sutras or Vinayas texts. We only get to see this kind of thing. I think the Ugra is the only one. If there happens to be in elsewhere throughout the Mahayana text, there must be pretty rare, right? So in order to practice the perfection of giving, right, the first perfections in out of six perfections, which is giving perfections, a bodhisattva must give anything, including alcohols, to those who are in need. So it is encouraged to give people alcohol, but they themselves cannot have it. All right. And I'm not saying that you should do this. I'm just representing what the text is saying. So, of course, regarding alcohols, we can also sometimes it goes hand in hand with any narcotics or cigarettes as well, because it causes you to have it again and again. And that's why, um, speaking about alcohol, we can talk a lot of things about it regarding alcohol and culture. What if our culture have this kind of alcohol drinking culture? It doesn't mean that we want to have fun with it. It's just our culture. And then what about alcohol and social? When you are having a meeting with a lot of people, and most of the time they are drinking alcohol. We don't have water, for example. And then what about alcohol and health, alcohol and job, alcohol and giving, right? Of course, these are all individual topics that we can discuss at a later time. But one thing for sure, even in the ethics of Buddhism, the fifth precept about alcohol, about intoxicants, is not really problematic in terms of ethics. The base of the Buddhist ethics lies in the first four precepts: no killing, no stealing, no sexual misconduct, and no lying. These four are the main foundation in the Buddhist ethic, but not the fifth. But why is the fifth included in the five precepts? Because if someone drinks a lot and get drunk, it will likely make someone to violate the other four precepts. You know what I mean? So if you get drunk, you don't have any clear consciousness, one is likely to violate, for example, killing or getting angry easily and then have a fight with someone and it ended up with killing someone. And after killing somebody, these people will lie to the friends and police. It's not um, saying that he has killed someone and so on and so forth. So it's considered the secondary precept in the Vinaya, but not the fundamental. That's why there is many rooms for discussion about fifth precept, whether should we really not touch even a drop of alcohol? Is it really problematic or what? Of course, that's another discussion. All right, so our Ugra text, we have, so in Sravakayana path, in the mainstream Buddhism, we have 5 precepts. But in the Bodhisattva precepts, the main precept of Bodhisattva is 10 good deeds, right? And then the Ugra is kind of combining the Sravakayana and Bodhisattva precepts and making it into 11 precepts from 10 good deeds and one from the 5 precepts, the fifth one, no intoxicants. But then one can still give away alcohol to somebody. But in the other text, it is forbidden, right? You cannot give alcohol to anyone else. It violates the fifth precept. You cannot drink it in your own, but you cannot also give it to other. But this text says you can do that because it's part of giving practice, right? And then we are moving on to the third chapter, which is physician. There is a simile of a doctor that I want to say from this chapter. If in a certain village, town, city, kingdom, or capital, there lives a skillful doctor, but he's unable to cure the poison of even a single being, then when that being dies, the doctor will be blamed by many people. In the same way, if there is a bodhisattva living in a village, town, city, kingdom, or capital, if he fails to admonish even a single being and does not cause him to be mindful, if he is born into any evil rebirth whatsoever, that bodhisattva will be blamed by the Tathagatas. So, in this chapter, it's basically saying that the lay bodhisattva, the Mahayana practitioner, has the responsibility like a doctor. You have to make sure that all the people around you practice on the path of Buddhism, or at least practice any kind of kindness so that they don't fall into lower realm of existence. All right, moving on to the filthy home. Well, it's getting really into our nerve now because of the content. So the filthy home, the word filthy itself is not a very beautiful term, right? But that's the point. That's the point that this sutra want to make, that the home, living at home with your wife and children, is not encouraged at all. So here the content is the faults of living at home. What does it mean by householders? Householders means ones who possess a house or who live with a family, right? Like y'all. And home is something that destroys the root of goodness. Notice the language is strong here. And living at home as a householder, meaning it is the place of all the corruption in terms of practicing the path of Bodhisattva. So It is the place of all painful things. I believe you all have experienced this. Living with your wife or husband and children can be very painful if you are not that kind of harmony family, right? And living there, one becomes disrespectful toward father and mother, right? Because, hanging out together is not hard, but living together, you get to see each other every day is the hard thing to do, actually. That's why if you live with your father and mother in the same house, you're likely to be disrespectful toward your father and mother. Living at home is contaminated, like good food that has been tainted by poison. Living at home is constant suffering because of being at odds like an enemy. If you are constantly having conflict with your spouse, with your children, then of course it's constant suffering, right? Also, living at home, there is mutually caused fighting. Living at home is like a net of thorns because one is tormented by forms, sounds, smells, tastes, thoughts objects, and mind objects. You got all these kinds of entertainment in your house. You can do anything you want in your house. Think about it. When you arrive at the temple, you know that you have to restrain yourself a lot. You have to notice what you're wearing to the temple today, right? And you have to be aware of your mind, speech, and action so that you don't offend anyone because it's a sacred place. That's why the text, the sutra, wants you to think about the faults of living at home, and it wants you to become a monk as soon as possible. This is the main intention of the text because I've already mentioned that this text is kind of proposing the forest monk tradition as the only way to attain Buddhahood. Not the only way, but it serves as a rigorous preparation for the Buddhahood into the next lives. Living at home, life is destroyed because of deceiving one another. Well, all what is written here, you don't have to believe it. You have your own arguments against it. I understand that. But this is the intention of the sutra. Living at home offers little enjoyment because one has many troubles. Right. All right. So those all are the faults about um, when someone living at home, being a householder and not go forth into becoming a monk soon. Right. And then the fifth chapter is giving. And it mentions about the benefits of giving. It says, what I give away will bring pleasure at another time. What I keep at home will only bring pleasure right now. What I give away does not need to be protected. What I keep at home must be protected. What is saying? What I give away supports the path to body because you complete the giving perfection. What I keep at home supports the party of Mara. Mara is kind of the bad one, the evil. And as I've mentioned before, in the chapter of giving, it puts emphasis on giving to the beggars. So there are some prescriptions for us. What should we think of when encountering beggars? The first, there are many three thoughts, three thoughts, three thoughts. The first three thoughts is the beggar as spiritual teacher. So we see the beggar as our spiritual teacher because of them. We have a chance to give them something. Hence, we have a chance to practice generosity. And then the second thought is he will become wealthy in his next life. So this is kind of the practice of great compassion. We are wishing the best for everybody. And then the third thought is giving to him supports the path to body because of the generosity practice. And then the thought of being separated from greed, cultivating loving kindness, not entering into delusion, kind of get rid of three poisons in Buddhism: be free from greed, hatred, and delusion by giving something to the beggar. And then we have to contemplate when one gives to beggars, his greed becomes weaker. When one has loving kindness toward beggars, his hatred grows weaker. When one transforms the resulting merit into supreme perfect enlightenment, his delusion grows weaker. So see, in this sutra, Ugra Sutra, he is asking us to see beggar in a different way, right? I don't know if in New Jersey you have a lot of homeless people on the street or beggars, because if you have a lot, you have a lot of opportunity to practice what is prescribed in this text. I know some people will come up with some arguments against this because of drugs and stuff like that. A lot of homeless people on the street are just doing drugs. So there's no point for us to give it to them, to give something to them, because they'll just use it to buy more drugs, alcohols, and nothing's gonna change. But okay, let's move on first about this point. This text has some answer. Again, seeing a beggar cultivates six perfections, just like in the Diamond Sutra. By giving, you complete the other six perfections. First, giving. When asked, his mind no longer grasps at that object. Morality, the second perfection, he gives while relying upon the spirit of enlightenment. That's why the second perfection is fulfilled. Third, patience, he gives without anger toward them. Thus, the patience perfection is cultivated. Fourth, energy. He is not depressed due to a wavering mind that thinks, if I give this away, what will become of me? And there's one remark that I want to make. One cannot become poor by giving something to other people. If you do donations a lot, if you practice giving perfection, one cannot become poor. I've never seen someone, oh, I give a lot, I donate a lot, or I help a lot, and then now I'm poor. It's never the case, at least in my experience. Fifth, concentration. Having given, he is free of sorrow and regret. That's why the concentration perfection is cultivated, because when one doing a meditation and his mind is free from regret or sorrow, one can easily attain absorption in meditation. Six, wisdom. He doesn't hope for their maturation. Okay, attitudes toward beggars. We have another prescription for this. When a beggar approaches a householder bodhisattva and asks for a certain thing, if he has not already given that thing away, he should reflect as follows: whether I give this thing away or not, I'll surely be separated from it in the future. If I give this thing up now, I will die with a joyous mind. So this is pretty useful advice, right? If I don't give this thing away, I will be separated from it in the future. So why not give this thing away right now? But there's, because of course this text is really friendly user. This text understands our circumstances by saying this. If one is still unable to give away, he should explain to the beggar by means of four explanation. See, it's like giving to a beggar is our duty, and if we cannot fulfill it, we have to feel sorry to the beggar by explaining these four things. My strength is meager, and my root of goodness are immature. I am only a beginner in the great vehicle. I am subject to thoughts of not giving. I still have the perspective of grasping. So, good sir, I beg you to forgive me and not to be upset. I will accomplish myself so as to fulfill your desires and those of all beings. I believe a lot of people might use this advice because currently I'm not in a moment for giving away things to you. So sorry by saying this thing. My root of goodness are immature. I'm still a beginner in the path of Bodhisattva. I'm still clinging to my wealth. So sorry, good sir, in a really polite manner toward the beggars. So um, there are two objects of giving. The first one is the respectful object, like when we give something or when we donate something to the temple, when we offer flowers, foods, fruits, burning incense to the Buddha, to the Buddha statue, to monks, parents, and teachers. These are all respectful object. But then on the other side, there are also this pity object, like giving to the beggars, sick people, and orphans. And a lot of people in the society, like those philanthropists, they will likely to help the second object, this pity object, right? But actually, we have another object of giving, respectful object, which will give us a higher quality of merits they when they are ripened in the future, right? But no matter what, this sutra is asking us to focus on the second object, especially the beggars. Why? Then it comes to our motivation of giving. A lot of ordinary people out there, even the lay Buddhist practitioner, a lot of the time when people offer something to the Buddha, they'll do it with kind of hoping for something mine. So it's not a pure offering anymore. It's just like a transaction between the deity and people, right? And it makes the giving act impure. But if you are forced to give something, even all your wealth, to a beggar, to someone that you don't even know, that you don't even respect, you're not necessarily being pitiful toward them given that they're doing drugs. But if you still give something to them, it becomes your motivation becomes pure. If if you were to give, if you were really to give something to them, so this kind of motivation becomes clear because you give it because you want to relinquish, you want to let go all your belonging, you want to practice this kind of letting go of all of your possessions. You don't care about the object, you don't care if your giving is fruitful, is beneficial or not. You only care about your own letting go mindset. Can you already let go all your belonging in your life when you do giving, or you do giving, you do offering because you want, you hope for something else? So our motivation and the motivation that this sutra wants us to cultivate is letting go. That's why beggar, this kind of poor people, is the most useful trigger for us to really think about ourselves when we give something to them, because they are not a fruitful field. Like if you give something to a monk, they have practice, they keep their precepts. That's why if you offer or give something to a monk or to a sage, your merit will be really, really fruitful. But to a beggar, to pure people, you don't get much merit from that. But you get to practice letting go, relinquishment. So this is the key. All right, I think I have to stop here and thank you for your attention. Let's see if there is any questions, thoughts, or comments.
Anybody have questions? Kind of heavy, huh? So we have to practice our Bodhisattva path. I mean, yes. So, Sifu, can you share the Buddha's image?
Sure. All right.
So let's share our merits and mindful. I will transfer merit verses with all of you. May we eliminate the three hindrances and all our afflictions. May we gain wisdom and true understanding. May the calamities and obstacles will remove universally. May we always walk the Bodhisattva path life after life. May this merit be shared universally with all. May all sentient beings and us attain Buddhahood. So let's bow to the three bows to the Buddha. First bow. Second bow. Third bow. Bow to the teacher. Thank you to come and join us to study early Bodhisattva practices.